WWE Clash of Champions 2019 is this Sunday from Charlotte, North Carolina. The first in 2 years since there was no Clash of Champions last year. It was originally scheduled to take place, and then they added the Evolution pay-per-view. They bumped this one off the schedule, so now it is making its grand return. And one match that will not be taking place Sunday is the finals of the King of the Ring between Baron Corbin and Chad Gable. Now, I, like a lot of people, thought the pay-per-view would be where the finals would take place. I am almost positive that at some point, whether it was on TV or on WWE.com, that it wasn't just the newsletters and the websites, that WWE at some point did say that it was going to take place at Clash of Champions. I could be completely wrong. Maybe WWE never said anything about that. I assumed it just because it just seemed to be the brand neutral place to do the finals of the King of the Ring, right? I mean, it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense if you think about it to have the King of the Ring finals with a Raw talent and a SmackDown talent happen on Monday Night Raw only, or happen on SmackDown only. But this is WWE, where very little tends to make sense. So, of course, the finals will be taking place this Monday night on Raw. And I'll just give a quick prediction here and now. I believe that we are, in fact, going to get King Corbin. They have given Chad Gable the fairy tale underdog story in this tournament. Nobody expected him to make it this far. I think very few people probably expected that he would make it past Andrade. And it is not, the final match that I would have booked when I initially was thinking about how this tournament might go. It certainly wasn't what I predicted. They busted my bracket pretty early on. But I'm very happy that Chad Gable has made it this far. He deserves some of the spotlight for a change. And here we are. And if you saw these two in the ring together that one time in NXT, because now on Twitter, everyone's sharing the GIFs of the Dusty Classic Tag Team Tournament match from like 5 years ago. And you had, Gable was in the ring with Corbin. I was talking about this a month ago before people were sharing all of this stuff on social media. And I was saying the same thing then that I'll say now. Now that we know it's going to be a Gable-Corbin final, I hope and I do think that we will see Gable give Corbin the chaos theory, which will never not be impressive, because Corbin is a much bigger person than Chad Gable is. But Gable is a freak. Gable is a former Olympian. These comparisons that people make between him and Kurt Angle, it's not just because some people think they look similar, or they use similar types of moves. They're both from that Olympic background. There's just something about these guys. These guys are like super athletes. And on top of that, if you followed Gable's career in NXT when he was an American Alpha, and he was trying to get Jason Jordan to be his tag team partner, and he had the towel, and it was Reddy Willing and Gable, and he would act kind of like a fool every week on TV. He would act all goofy. It always reminded me of the early years of Kurt Angle in WWE, Kurt Angle circa 2000, when he was doing a lot of comedy stuff. It really wasn't until the following year, and then in later years, that Angle went full-on wrestling machine and really cut all the comedy out. But we just haven't really had the chance to see Gable's personality come out the way that we did in NXT. In due time, we might have the chance to see that. But here's a guy who can be, the wrestling machine, suplexing everybody and suplexing guys twice his size. But he could also show personality, and he can be funny and witty, and he can be in funny little skits. So that's why I think the comparisons between him and Kurt Angle are well-deserved, because there are a lot of similarities between the two of them, especially early on in Angle's career. And hey, that's not a bad comparison to make if you're Chad Gable. But I do think we'll get a chaos theory to Baron Corbin, and I think they will try to recreate that tilt-a-whirl into an end-of-days finish. If Corbin is going to win, that's the finish that I would do. That's the finish that I would want to see. I just can't see them putting Gable over in 4 straight matches in this tournament. I wish they would. And that they would make him Chad Gable the wrestling machine. But Corbin, I gotta say this about Baron Corbin. For his part, I give the devil his due. He has been really good in this tournament. So I think that this is, whoever's going to win, I think on Monday night, this is going to be a hell of a match. I think we're in for a great match. But in the end, Gable falls short and Baron Corbin takes the crown. And he had better hope that he has better luck with it than Sheamus and Wade Barrett had. Because the last two King of the Rings, that didn't work out too well for the two of those guys. So, the Clash. We have a triple threat match for the Cruiserweight Championship. Drew Gulak defends against Humberto Carrillo and Lince Dorado. Carrillo beat Oney Lorcan in a number one contenders match to earn the shot. Dorado then beat Carrillo the following week to earn his place, hence the triple threat. Dorado getting a title match is very interesting. It is interesting when you consider that he is part of the Lucha House Party. And the Lucha House Party may well be counting down the days to the end of their WWE contracts. Last month, Kalisto, before he pulled the old tweet and delete, as so many of these wrestlers tend to do, Kalisto tweeted, 10 months, free agent. Grand Metalik then quoted him and said, me too. That was when Braun Strowman tweeted Kalisto and said, adios muchacho. Alright, so he didn't say muchacho, but I still thought it was funny either way. But you can tell Braun Strowman, hey, he's a team player. He just re-signed a few months ago with WWE for another 4 years. And here's this Kalisto guy saying, hey, 10 months, I'll be a free agent. And obviously Braun felt he was bothered by this. He kind of pulled a Seth Rollins. He's very defensive, very protective of his company. And so he tweeted, adios. And then Kalisto deleted his tweet. But all of a sudden, we see Metalik wrestling Rey Mysterio on Monday night. When was the last time Grand Metalik was in any kind of meaningful match in WWE? All of a sudden, he's wrestling Rey Mysterio on Monday. Now here's Lince Dorado getting a championship match on pay-per-view. There's no way that this is a coincidence. Now, there's also history in storyline between Carrillo and Gulak, the whole student-teacher dynamic. That ended a few months ago. I'm going to say the student upsets the teacher. And when I say he, Carrillo pins Dorado and not Gulak to win the championship. Humberto Carrillo will be the new Cruiserweight champion, is my prediction. And that will then lead to more matches between Carrillo and Gulak. We have Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. And by the way, we don't know yet as I am recording this here on Friday. It has not been announced what the pre-show match, the kickoff, is going to be. Which one of these matches it might be, or if they may add another 1 or 2 matches to the pay-per-view and put that on the kickoff. We don't know yet. So I put that out there. But we have Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss defending the women's tag team titles against Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. On SmackDown Tuesday night, they had Mandy cut a promo. A cringe-worthy promo. It just wasn't a good promo. Calling Nikki Cross ugly and saying that she looked like a New York City rat. I specify that by saying New York City rat, like pizza rat, as opposed to the other kind of wrestling rat, which I'm sure Nikki Cross is not. So this wasn't quite Piggy James territory. I know a lot of people hated this. They thought it was offensive. I mean, I just saw it for what it was. I saw it as just cheap heel heat, right? The heel says, hey, you're ugly, I'm beautiful. I mean, that's pretty standard shit. But the thing about it is, the whole I'm pretty, you're ugly thing, it's booking to 8-year-olds. It's probably being booked by 8-year-olds. Which actually is an insult to 8-year-olds, so I take that back. Point being, not exactly a lot of depth here to this Women's Tag Team Championship feud. Now, I like Mandy and Sonya as a team, but I don't think they're winning these titles. I have Nikki and Alexa to retain. We have Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman defending the Raw Tag Team titles against Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode. Now, they don't have to drop the titles here before they get to their main event match, but I think they should. We have the champions pulling double duty on Sunday We know that Rollins and Strowman they're going to have that head-to-head for the Universal title, but first they have to defend the tag team belts. Ziggler and Roode are a new team. They were just put together at random a few weeks ago. And to their credit, they had this tag team gauntlet, and they've tried so far in just the last 2 weeks or so to make us believe that Roode and Ziggler are a well-oiled machine. They're a threat to be reckoned with. They've put Bobby Roode over as strong as, they have probably since he debuted on the main roster. Paul Heyman is said to be a fan of Bobby Roode's. He's been winning a lot of matches for his team with the glorious DDT. So I guess, maybe because of Heyman, they're going to try to rehab him. If they can't beat feuding tag team partners here on this show, then what's the point? What is the point? How far will these two go? If they cannot beat two men who are wrestling later in the show, who are not going to be on the same page, all it takes is one little miscommunication for Seth Rollins to get rolled up. So I'm going to say the Universal Champion in this matchup is going to be pinned by Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler, one or the other. And Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler are going to be your new Raw Tag Team Champions. And that builds more tension between Rollins and Strowman heading into the main event. We have Shinsuke Nakamura defending the Intercontinental Championship against The Miz. They've given The Miz wins now the last couple of weeks over Cesaro and over Andrade on Tuesday night. Right? They're trying to build him back up. He has never fully recovered from those losses to Shane McMahon. That Shane McMahon feud, which started out well enough as they were building to WrestleMania. If you remember, if you listen to the full sound-offs, I kind of liked the feud. I liked the storyline. The way it was building, the Shane turn heading into WrestleMania, I was okay with it. A lot of people weren't. I said, look, it's not the main event. It is a perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable mid-card feud. And I dig it, so long as they blow it off at WrestleMania, because it was going on since November, or maybe even earlier, maybe October. Whenever that Saudi pay-per-view was where Shane won the Best in the World tournament. A rare long-term storyline. And then WrestleMania came and went, and granted it was a cheap win, but Shane McMahon beat The Miz. Then they had a rematch inside of a steel cage, and Shane McMahon beat The Miz. And we never did get that big Miz win over Shane McMahon. No, we got more shenanigans on TV. Shane screwing The Miz tapping out to Shane McMahon's awful triangle choke. I don't care if Elias helped. I don't care if Drew McIntyre helped. That's not the point. He kept on losing. He was made to look like a bitch. And he never got his revenge. He never got, Shane never got his comeuppance. Because now the feud is Shane and Kevin Owens. It's not The Miz. So The Miz has been left in the dust. So now they're trying to give Miz some wins on TV to build him back up. We'll see if it works. He still gets cheered when he comes out. But boy, whatever momentum this guy had has been just completely obliterated. It is gone. Nakamura, he's got Sami Zayn now in his corner. He'll factor into this. And because of that, I think Miz is going to win the match by DQ. He's going to win the match by disqualification. He will not win the championship. That keeps it open for a rematch, maybe at Hell in a Cell. But there will be no 9th Intercontinental title for The Miz, at least not on Sunday. We have Bayley defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against Charlotte Flair in Charlotte. Remember, Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where they're going to be on Sunday. I was very happy to see Sasha Banks come back as a heel on television a few weeks ago. And I was almost as happy to see them pull off what looked like, at the time, a heel turn for Bayley. I wasn't expecting it. It was long overdue. Now, having said that, we have yet to see any real signs of a heel turn since then with Bayley. She's got more of an edge. She's got more of an attitude. But I'm still waiting for them to go full-on heel with this woman. Sunday would be a good time to do it. She needs to do whatever it takes to keep her championship, even if that means cheating her way to a win. She came out on TV the night after that, she killed Becky with a chair when she did the turn, quote unquote. And she came out on TV the next night on SmackDown and she said, hey, I don't know why you people are so surprised. Sasha's my best friend. What else did you expect? She said, all I'm doing, I'm showing the kids, all of the young fans of WWE, I'm showing them what it means to be loyal to your friends. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe the next lesson is, if let's say in this match she hooks the tights or uses a weapon or something similar to win, maybe the next lesson could be, I didn't do anything wrong. I was just teaching all the kids out there another lesson, which is do whatever it takes to win. Win at all costs. Or as Bobby Heenan used to say, win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat. Which actually I think is a phrase that Jesse Ventura came up with. But I know for a fact that Bobby Heenan used it a whole bunch of times. But they cannot just play it safe with Bayley. Right? They can't play it safe forever with this woman and have it both ways. Well, we'll keep her music and we'll keep the wacky wailing inflatable tube men. And she'll come out with the pigtails and she'll be the same old Bayley. But, she's friends with Sasha Banks and she'll hit people with a chair every now and then. That's bullshit. Either turn her or don't. You can't have it both ways. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. Shit or get off the pot. It's very simple. Now, we're still early into this. Maybe they're building to it. But from what I've seen on TV the last few weeks, it's just they're playing it very safe. Don't play it safe. Make a move. If you're going to turn the woman, turn her heel. Go all the way with it. Maybe we'll see that on Sunday. She needs to do something in this match to show that this is not the same old Bayley that we've seen for the last, whatever it's been, 3 years that she's been on the main roster. And I don't think Charlotte should be winning the championship back either. We all know that she's going to break her father's record one day when it comes to the women's title. She's already got, 8 of them? 9 of them? I've lost count. I don't think she's in double digits yet, but she's close. We know she's going to get there. Now is not the time to be putting the championship back on Charlotte. So I'm going to say Bayley retains, and they take this feud to the Cell pay-per-view next month. We have the New Day defending their SmackDown Tag Team titles against the Revival, a Raw team challenging for the SmackDown titles. Let us hope that death comes swiftly for this wild card rule next month. That's the rumor. Even if that does mean splitting up Randy Orton and the Revival, and I'm a fan of their little trio, but Orton's a SmackDown guy, the Revival are on Raw. And unless you move one or the other, they may be split up next month. So be it. So be it. If that means getting rid of the wild card rule, then so be it. But then again, if they lose here, Randy Orton may not care to associate with them anymore. How much longer are they going to carry this alliance on for? But I do think Woods and Big E are going to retain the tag team titles here because it's just stupid to put the titles on a team from another brand. So I think the New Day retains. We have AJ Styles defending the United States Championship against Cedric Alexander. Cedric's career has been on the upswing ever since Paul Heyman started to gain influence over the Raw brand. He's a fan of this guy. I don't need to read some dirt sheet newsletter website. I can just watch the show. Cedric Alexander was doing a whole lot of nothing. All of a sudden, ever since Paul Heyman seemed to ascend to power, Cedric Alexander is being pushed like a real commodity on Monday Night Raw. So Heyman is clearly a fan of this guy, and so am I. So were a lot of people. Coming out of his performance in the Cruiserweight Classic, you had the entire crowd, 400 people or whatever it is at Full Sail, chanting, whatever. What was the exact? I don't even remember what the exact chant was. They wanted him to be signed to a contract. It might have been signed Cedric, and out came Triple H, and he basically said, okay. All right, sure. And Cedric Alexander was signed to a contract, which he probably was going to be anyway. But the fans made it very well known that they liked this guy, and they wanted him to be signed. So there's been a lot of love for Cedric going all the way back to that tournament. And, for a while he was on 205 Live and he sort of stagnated after he won the Cruiserweight title and then lost it. And then he started showing up on Monday Night Raw. but they weren't really doing anything with him. And what ends up happening is, and he's one example, I mean, you could probably point to a lot of different people. You start to take talented guys like that for granted. You know they're there. You know they're on the roster. You know what they're capable of. But because they're not doing anything with them, it's like, oh, they got Cedric Alexander. All right, so what? They've got Grand Metalik. All I heard about Grand Metalik before he came to WWE, oh boy, WWE, they picked up maybe one of the best luchadors in the world. You guys are going to be blown away by what you see from Grand Metalik. And what have we seen from Grand Metalik? He comes out with Lucha House Party. When the Lucha House Party was getting that first push of theirs, they came out with a fucking piñata. This is what WWE did with the Lucha House Party. They would put them on Raw. They'd be in a 2-minute match. Did I mention the piñata? Yeah. So you kind of end up forgetting how talented some of these guys really are. You take them for granted. You don't fully appreciate what they are capable of because they don't have a chance to show it. That was Cedric Alexander for a long time. And then he upset Drew McIntyre at the beginning of the King of the Ring tournament. McIntyre, who apparently was dying, unbeknownst to me and unbeknownst to all of us. We didn't even know it. Apparently he was sick as a dog. I don't know what he had. Some kind of virus maybe. But he was apparently very sick for a while. And then came the King of the Ring and he was barely able to get out of bed. You would never have known it. I thought him and Cedric had a kick-ass match on Raw several weeks ago. Opening round, King of the Ring. Cedric won. I think McIntyre after that went on an overseas tour. Came back, was still sick. He had to be told by the company, hey, go to a doctor. You don't look right. So he goes to a doctor. Whatever it was that they found was wrong with him, they rushed him in for surgery. And from what I understand, he's doing a lot better now. And in fact, he hasn't been cleared yet, but he's ready to come back any day. He's just waiting to be cleared. So whatever it was, thankfully it wasn't like a muscle injury or a bone. He didn't break his leg. He didn't tear a muscle. It's not something that's going to require rehab. It's going to keep him on the shelf for months at a time. He'll probably be back on television in a matter of weeks, which is great. But that was a huge win for Cedric Alexander. Last Monday night, Madison Square Garden, he main evented Monday Night Raw at Madison Square Garden in that 10-man tag. And of all the 10 men in that match, it was Cedric who got the pinfall victory over AJ Styles. And then he drinks beer in the ring with Stone Cold Steve Austin to close out the show. This guy is on a roll. He's getting the biggest push of his life. But I think that ends on Sunday. I'm going to go with AJ Styles to retain. There's no reason to rush the championship onto him. He's not Goldberg. He's not The Fiend. Cedric Alexander is not the kind of personality that needs this long winning streak. He's a sympathetic character who the people seem to like and they want to root for. Now, if he's competitive in this match on Sunday and he loses, or if the OC gets involved and they cost him, Anderson and Gallows, they cost him the championship, the fans are going to want to see him win the title that much more. At least in theory, you hope. So he could lose here, come back and win it the next time. Or he could be drafted onto SmackDown next month. And instead of challenging for the US title, maybe he's next in line to challenge Shinsuke Nakamura for the Intercontinental title. Who knows? That's assuming Paul Heyman wouldn't mind losing him. But I think AJ Styles wins this match. Then we have Roman Reigns against Erick Rowan in a no disqualification match. He is Eric again. You notice that? He got his first name back. He was only Rowan. Now he's Erick Rowan again, even on the website. Erick Rowan. He got his first name back. Ali is somewhere waiting patiently in the wings. This storyline has been a mess. They've tried for the cliffhanger TV, and cliffhanger soap opera TV can be effective. It's not a bad idea. Keep people wanting more. But the objective is to give them a good story. Right? You want to give them a good story that's going to keep them wanting more. The story here sucks. Someone is trying to murder Roman Reigns, really? That's the story? And that person Is Erick Rowan? That's the best they could come up with? I still say that the end game here is to reveal that Daniel Bryan was behind it all along. And to get to Bryan, Roman Reigns first has to get past Rowan. On Tuesday, they had this giant brawl. It saw Rowan powerbomb a plant in the crowd onto Roman. He wiped out Roman and all the security, goofballs. And when I say plant, I don't mean he literally powerbombed a plant. Humorous as that visual is. It was a planted fan in the audience. Then they brawled up the ramp. They brawled up onto the stage. Rowan grabbed a, what do they call it? A jib camera on a crane. He swung it right at Roman's head, knocked him out. It wasn't a bad closing angle. But I'd be lying if I said I gave a shit about this match or this storyline. I don't care. I don't care. Are you excited by this storyline? Be honest. Are you excited by this storyline? If you say yes, you're a liar. And, I don't know if they do the big reveal here, if they save it for TV, but I'm ready for this angle to be over already. So I'm going to say Roman Reigns wins. And please, let us get to Roman against Daniel Bryan. Enough with the bullshit. Enough with the teases. Enough with the swerves. I mean, if this was a hot angle, if this was a fun angle or an interesting angle to follow along, then by all means, keep it going. But it's not. So get to the point and get to Roman Reigns against Daniel Bryan, please. End this angle. Kofi Kingston defends the WWE title against Randy Orton. Their match at SummerSlam had no finish. Orton has been taunting Kofi for weeks. He's been calling him stupid as a callback to the match they had in 2009, where Kofi botched a move, I think it was on Raw, and Orton lost his temper on TV, and then mysteriously, Kofi's mini push died a death. So they're borrowing from reality here in this angle. A rare callback, a bit of consistency here in the WWE universe, the WWE world. They don't always do this. Shawn Michaels came back in 2002. It wasn't until 2009 that he and The Undertaker entered into a feud. They never acknowledged their history together, and I always thought that was a big mistake not to do that. Even Triple H and The Undertaker, when they had their WrestleMania match, WrestleMania 27, probably because of The Undertaker, he was doing a different gimmick at the time. Supposedly Vince McMahon just is not a fan looking back, I guess, at the American Badass, but it completely ignored the fact that they had had a previous WrestleMania match. They had a history together. I severely dislike when they do that because it's as though they think we're all a bunch of morons, or they only cater to the newer fans and they don't give a shit about the older fans who follow along with these storylines. It's like, well, it was a different world and it just never happened. It doesn't exist. They have done the opposite here. They have embraced the history between Kofi and Randy Orton, and they're borrowing from reality because the reality is Kofi's push did come to an end after that little incident with Randy Orton. Whatever the actual reason was it Orton? Was it just the fact that, they got tired of Kingston, didn't see him in a headline position? Whatever it was, his push, which was very real, and I was in Madison Square Garden that night. He did the boom drop on Orton the first time. They recreated it this week, but I was in the building that night. And there were a lot of, big names in the building that night. Main event had Undertaker and John Cena, this big tag team match. They had Roddy Piper, I think, calling out Vince McMahon, as I recall, and a lot of big names on that show. In fact, it was the end of that Piper-Vince segment, I think, where Orton and Kofi, they came out. They were kind of doing their thing, brawling into the crowd. These people were into Kofi Kingston. You would think that he was one of the biggest stars in the entire company. It was a huge moment for him. So I think it's cool for them to draw, back on that old history, the old rivalry between the two of them. Orton and the Revival, they have taken out the other members of the New Day. First, it was Xavier Woods. They did this angle where they didn't break his leg, but they kind of broke his leg, even though it wasn't officially a broken leg. Then they went after Big E. They took him out. The last sight of these two that we had on Tuesday night on SmackDown was of Kofi recreating the boom drop through a table at Madison Square Garden, the same place that he gave Orton the boom drop through a table a decade earlier. Only this time they had 7,000 people in the building instead of 17,000. That's what they had. That was the paid attendance. I had to look it up. Paid attendance in 2009 for that last Monday Night Raw at MSG, 17,000. The full attendance was actually a little over 20,000. Hey, such is life with SmackDown attendance these days. It ain't good. I know they did run the building 2 nights in a row. That's true. They ran the Garden on Monday. They ran it on Tuesday. You would think, okay, maybe they wouldn't do as well on Tuesday. But still, SmackDown most weeks, you see the photos. We read the reports. We see the fan photos. And yes, sometimes fans, they take a picture before the show even starts. And it's not, it's bullshit because, of course, you're not going to have a full building. But there have been some very real photos shared online in the middle of a SmackDown taping. You see the big names in the ring. The show is in progress. The announcers are at ringside. And you have half the building is completely empty. Half the building is tarped off. That's not good. That's a big difference from the types of crowds they were doing 10 years ago when Orton and Kofi were feuding for the first time. So not a huge crowd on Tuesday, but they recreated the spot. And the way I look at it is this. They could go 2 ways with it. There's really 2 ways for them to go with this match. They could have Kofi prove to Randy Orton 10 years after their last feud that he, in fact, does belong. Gets his revenge. Nice little redemption story. He retains the championship. And he moves on to the next challenger, whomever that may be. Or they give the WWE title to Randy Orton. And Kofi wins it back. Either on that first SmackDown on Fox on October 4. Or maybe that Sunday at Hell in a Cell. You make Kofi chase to get the title back. I personally think that once Kofi Kingston loses the WWE Championship, he ain't getting it back. That's it. That's just the feeling I have. I think when it's over, it's over. But there's nothing wrong with having him lose it and win it back to prove people like me wrong who don't think that there's going to be a second WWE Championship reign for Kofi Kingston. But I'm going to say here in this match, I think Kofi retains. Seth Rollins defends the Universal Championship against Braun Strowman. We have 2 baby faces, currently the Raw Tag Team Champions, feuding for the Universal title. Strowman, at one time, was the hottest act on Monday Night Raw. Maybe the hottest act in the entire company. He had multiple chances to win the Tomato title. And he failed each and every single time. He even won the Money in the Bank briefcase. And he failed again to win the championship. And that cooled him off a lot. I don't care how big and nasty this guy is. How many times can you lose? How many times can you fall short before people give up on you? Now he's gotten some of that momentum back. Not all of it. He's not quite as hot of an act as he used to be, a year ago, year and a half ago. But he's got enough of that back. But now it just seems like they've booked themselves into a corner. Because he either wins the championship, which I don't think he's doing, or he loses. Again. You can't beat this guy again and expect that people are ever going to get excited for another Braun Strowman championship match. Unless, and here's the caveat, unless he does not win, but he does not lose. They've already announced that The Fiend, right? Bray Wyatt, he's going to meet the winner of this match for the championship next month inside Hell in a Cell. They've confirmed that. We already know that. They kept him off television this week. He was in a dark match at Madison Square Garden, never appeared on TV. I think we see The Fiend on Sunday, possibly taking out both men. Meaning that the match either ends in some kind of disqualification or a no contest. Now I think the no contest, frankly, is more likely. And depending on how they do it, I think we get no definitive winner here in this match. And the match at Hell in a Cell turns into a triple threat match for the championship with Rollins defending against Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. And that is as much because of the fact that if Strowman loses here on Sunday, I don't know what you do with him. I don't know what you do with him. Where does he go from here? If he loses, if he just gets beat, it's over. I mean, and the only way that would be okay for him is if they plan on moving him over to the SmackDown roster in this draft that they're going to be doing next month. And they figure, well, hey, it doesn't matter. He's going to be drafted, so he can lose here. It's fine. It's almost like going from one territory to the other, right? Back in the day, tradition, if you were going to leave and go somewhere else, you would do the honors. You'd be on your back looking up at the lights. You'd lose, and you'd move on to the next territory. Unless they're looking at it from that point of view, he can't just go in there and lose again. It would be a death sentence for him. So I don't think we're getting a winner. I don't think we're getting a definitive winner in this match. Seth Rollins is going to retain, but Strowman is not necessarily going to lose. And I think the match at Hell in a Cell, very likely going to be a triple threat match. Now, you might be listening to this thinking, oh, Solomonster, you forgot a match. No, I didn't. I saved this one for last. And I know it's a long shot. And I know that if The Fiend is going to show up on Sunday, they're probably going to want that to close out the show. But the main event of this show for me, the match that I'm looking forward to the most, a lot more than Seth Rollins against Braun Strowman, personally, is Becky Lynch defending the Raw Women's Championship against the boss, Sasha Banks. One half of the 2K20 video game cover is Becky Lynch. Putting her in the main event wouldn't be that much of a stretch, especially if they're going to change the championship, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen. One of the reasons that the women's division on Monday Night Raw has felt so weak for most of the year, let's be honest, since WrestleMania, ever since she won the championship, Becky went right into a feud with Lacey Evans. She was not ready for that spot. It was not an exciting feud. It was not an interesting feud in the slightest. They did a whole bunch of matches. It was as though the Raw Women's division just came to a screeching halt. Then they went from that to Becky against Natty at SummerSlam. Oh, SummerSlam's in Canada, so we'll have Natty challenge for the championship. You know what? Becky and Natty at SummerSlam, they ended up having a really good match. But I cannot look at Natalya as a headline attraction in the women's division. Her time has come and gone. There's just nothing to get excited about there. So I know a lot of people, every time they hear the word bitch in a promo, oh my God, this said bitch. Oh my God, it sends a tingle up my spine. Who gives a shit? Who cares? That doesn't make a great feud. That didn't make that any more interesting to me. Becky has done nothing of interest since winning the championship at WrestleMania. And then Sasha came back. And not only did she come back, she came back as a heel. And one of the reasons that this division has felt so weak for much of the year is because Sasha Banks, after WrestleMania, she went home. And she did not come back to work until just recently. Her coming back was a boost to that division that it has sorely been lacking for a very long time. But her coming back as a heel made that division and made Becky Lynch infinitely more interesting. Now, I don't know what their plans are as far as the draft coming up next month. It's possible they do this one match between the two of them and then they just move on. They move Sasha over to the SmackDown brand, right? Blue hair, and she ends up on the blue brand. But if not, if she's not going to move, I think she is the perfect person for Becky Lynch to drop that Raw Women's Championship to. You have this television show. What do they tell us every week? Monday Night Raw, it's the longest running episodic television show. Okay, fine. You have an episodic television show. You've got to find ways to keep things interesting. If Becky beats Sasha straight up, makes her tap to the disarmer, what's next? What's next? Tell me what's next. Look at the roster as it currently exists on Monday Night Raw and tell me what's next. Tell me what could be better, given the roster in its current state, than what they're doing now with Becky and Sasha. I'll wait. The answer is there is nothing. Who's next in line? So you start looking outside of the Raw roster and you think of Someone like Shayna Baszler from NXT. Maybe she's going to get the call up. There's a natural feud there with her history with Ronda Rousey. But if they're not ready to do that, if they don't want to give up Shayna just yet, NXT is going to USA, maybe they want to keep her on there for a while, then Sasha Banks is the woman to take that championship from Becky Lynch and make her chase to get it back. On Monday night, they had a tag team match. Charlotte and Becky beat Sasha and Bayley. Charlotte pinned Bayley. She hit the natural selection, got the win for her team. Now it's time for Sasha and Bayley to have their revenge on Sunday. You cannot turn Sasha Banks heel and then just beat her. And some people might say, well, she deserves it. She pitched a fit. She walked out on the company. We don't know that for a fact. I'd kind of laugh if Sasha just was given time off to kind of heal up some minor nagging injuries, And it turned into this whole story about how she's refusing to come back. And the whole time she was just hurt. And she just got some time off and now she's back. I'm not saying that, that's what happened here. But we don't know all the facts in that situation. But there are people who are very adamant. She walked out on the company. She's not a team player. How can you reward this woman? How could she come back and just march right into a women's championship feud? Let alone put the title on her? What message does that send to the rest of the roster? You know what? I don't care. That's not my concern. That's for Vince McMahon to worry about. That's for Paul Heyman and Triple H and all of them to worry about. She is a very valuable commodity on that television show. For a women's roster that is very thin on stars. As a fan, I want to see Sasha Banks in the mix. I don't give a shit what she may or may not have done after, she's on the floor, she's crying. I don't care. I don't give a shit. When I put the television show on Monday night, I want to be entertained. Lacey Evans is not getting the job done. Natalya is not getting the job done. Ruby Riott, she's out hurt. Nia Jax, she's out hurt. Take your time. Who else is there? Sasha Banks. Heel Sasha Banks. Great. Don't punish her. You punish her, you punish us, you punish me. What did I ever do? Don't punish me. This is the match. This is the feud that people want to see. And I would put the championship on her. Put the title on her. And if they put the title on her, you could easily close the show with that match. That's why I saved this for last. I know they probably aren't going to do it. I know it's a long shot. But I would very seriously consider putting this match on last, especially if you're going to do a title change. So that's your Clash of Champions card. I'm going to be going live on YouTube immediately after the show is over on Sunday night with my review. I will be taking some phone calls at the very end. I know this greatly disturbs a very vocal minority of you out there, even though I save them for the very end, so you can easily turn the review off once the review portion is over. Some people just cannot accept this. I have the name of a great therapist that you can see. She got me through some very dark times, like that Aces and Eights period of Impact, and all of Monday Night Raw last year. She's very good. She can help you too. I will give you her number. Her first name is 2, last name is Bad. I'll be more than happy to make the introduction. So I hope you'll join me on Sunday night. We'll be live back here on the YouTube channel. Until then, adios muchachos.